WesWes Show.
Good work, boys. Nice wrap on the Warriors season. I think another saving grace for the Warriors season has been the Broncos. I will come to you, the Iceman, on the season that was probably the one that was worse than the Warriors and has saved us a lot of poor publicity and a lot of airtime. So let's spend some more airtime on the Brisbane Broncos demise.
I'll make it quick.
No. Let's take our time through this, man. Let's break it
Well,
down.
probably
Let's break it down. Let's go 1 to 13 on this, man.
the biggest flop of the year, really, from grand finals to Port Bay. I mean, not even this is like can't even call it Port Bay, man. It's pretty. It just goes to show they were lacking a bit of depth when they couldn't have their best players all together. Reynolds was out for a good part of the season. Reynolds and Ezra Mann didn't really get a chance to play many games together, even with Walsh at the back. But it was a big loss. If you look at where they gave a lot of points on the edges, without Carrigan and Haas there, the forwards were a bit, like I said, they were a bit light on the bench. Good youth coming through with Takuda, who got injured. Willison, he got a bit of game. But, someone like Jensen, he's a toiler. But I think they're a bit weak off the bench. I think they should have started and played Marty from the start off the bench. So at least he, without Carrigan and I think they missed a lot during that middle origin part. I think they really struggled. But as a fan, it was frustrating as well because they'll put like a few moments together during one half of a game and just look untouchable. They're one of those teams that can make tries out of nothing, especially with Walsh at the back there. Cobbo, I think, went backwards this year. But yeah, even though with those injuries in there, I still would have thought would enough to get us into the 8. And that left-hand side, I thought on the edge, especially when Mariner went to centre, which is good first year too for Lapu's boy, Dean Mariner, scored a couple of good individual tries. But just with him and Piakuda, who I think is a little bit injury-prone at the moment, just defending together. They got, especially in that Bulldogs game at home. And that's another thing. There's like a handful of games that was just shit, got wasted. That Titans game, come back from nothing, beat us at the end, gave away 36 points, 30 points straight. That Dolphins game. So it was just mentally, Kiwi's got a bit of work to do, get these boys back up. They need a hard, tough preseason.
Yeah, you still trusting in Kiwi? You think he's still the future?
There, bro. Yeah, I do. I think the pressure's on if come halfway through the season and they're not, at least competing for 8 position. But we took them to a grand final last year, so you could at least give them another year to have a look where they end up. But definitely that roster should be top 8.
Bobby, kind of comparisons to the Warriors, just their depth in terms of injuries. I don't know what else you saw from the Broncos. Yeah, just failing to hold on.
Yeah, I think for me, the Broncos season turned around when Adam Reynolds got injured, and then that was the start really of the slide that I referred to earlier in the season. It was the start, and I mentioned it back then too that one of the things that made Adam Reynolds' absence even more significant for the Broncos was that the remaining Broncos players didn't step into that breach in terms of leadership-wise.
Yeah.
And so you had guys like Carrigan who step up during Origin, but then goes back to clubland. And this is similar to Latrell itself, and then plays really mediocre. He was playing not to his potential. And Payne Haas also was probably the one that, for me, I've mentioned before that Payne Haas he's an actions guy. He doesn't talk too much.
He's probably as quiet as he is.
Yeah, you don't see him in the huddles of teams, and you don't see him doing this. Or, come on, guys, get on my back. He just he's just the doer, and he does stuff, and
Yeah.
everything else just sort of falls onto the back of Payne Haas eating up those meters up the middle. And this year, Payne had a really, really quiet season compared to previous seasons,
Yeah.
and that was evident when him and Adam Fanua-Blake are like the two props, and then next minute he sort of falls down the pecking order, and then the Warriors have Mitch Barnett and Adam as the two sort of props that are
big boys.
standing out and that are sort of seen in across the NRL as this really powerhouse duo that's going, similar to like the Panthers duo of Leota and Fish Harris. What's the other thing I forgot to mention is that we get Fish Harris next year at the Warriors. So, and so with Payne Haas not performing, Carrigan not stepping into the breach, and then there was just no one else at the Broncos, whether they were in the forwards or whether in the backs, who stepped into to take on a leadership type role once Reynolds got injured. And then you had guys like Corey Oates, who was making all this noise at the start of the year, getting angry pants because he wasn't getting any game time. It was like,
He's too slow, man. He's got to retire.
Yeah, exactly.
He,
Come into the second row, then, mate.
his
You want to
time
play?
is probably done. And having Taupa'u is probably a good thing that Sai touched on. It would have been way better if he had sort of come in and stepped into that gap. They had other guys
just as one of the
that I hadn't heard of. Hetherington, Ben Takura had a few
Baker,
sort of.
he was a dud. He was a new buy. Takura's good, but these guys are young.
They are young, and like
Wilson's
Wilson's
good. He's the future. Wilson.
He is. I really rate that kid. Ben Takura, like I was watching that game against Storm, and Munster's sort of crabbing across field. Ben Takura comes across to try and tackle him. Munster puts up this big don't argue, and he flattens on his ass. And I was like, Sale, that was Makanga, this humongous ass prop, getting put on his ass by flipping Munster. And
when you're talking about Payne Haas, Haas and Carrigan, they're similar kind of mindset. They do the grunt work and give you your meters and stuff like that. But what we missed from last year, what every forward pack should have, is one of those fucking ukae, like just really hard up on defense. Fletcher, who I got to mention, bro, he's got a bad. Good luck to Fletcher. Toby Fletcher, he's had a season ending injury for the Dolphins. He was the big loss.
Might retire,
I believe. Because he was that leadership, bro. Someone who just doesn't do the same meters as a Haas or Carrigan, but Solo is just straight up the guts, man. Can pull off a hit. We missed him at Queensland as well, but yeah, bro. There's all the money's going into Carrigan and Haas's, and you got all these young fellas coming through. I don't think we've got any extra buys either.
The money's going into Carrigan's Haas. What did you say? Can you repeat what you just said? Just the way you just joined it.
There's a pain in his house.
Leadership for me at the Broncos in the playing squad, but then also in the coaching ranks. Like, there's all this talk that maybe Walters is not, he ain't that right guy no more, and I'm hearing this talk about how they were trying to send the SOS out to Benny Eichen to come back. He was like the manager of football at the Broncos before they dropped him.
I don't know.
And I was like, because him and Walters butted heads, and so I'm like, oh well, if there's that sort of talk, but it'll be real hard to get rid of Walters from the coaching because he's got the backing of all the Broncos old boys, who really
they're gonna make that next year. Otherwise, he'll lose his job.
Yeah, well, that's probably what's going to happen. So, yeah, good luck for next season, Broncos. But thank you for being more kaya than the Warriors this year.
There's that impact of because I guess we talk about Carrigan and Haas, and TPJ talked about it when he was saying, like, after they won, he was like, they expected all of us young guys to turn up and just be leaders. Well, we had no one to learn off, and I don't know, like, maybe their bodies are just starting to feel. I was saying, like, even with Binger, just these young bodies getting used to first grade. It's a lot of workload, like, needing to have some of those older heads. And now all of a sudden, Haas and Carrigan are the old heads. So, yeah, I don't know, with these new guys coming through, and that's who they're looking up to, and those guys kind of, like you're saying, they're just the doers. Everyone's looking at them to speak, and so I don't know. So how do you see it, Stace, moving forward with a lot of young talent again coming through?
Yeah.
And the Broncos aren't even buying. There's no games next year. I don't know what's happening with your salary, man. Where's all the money gone? What's going on, man?
Chris Walsh, we're saving it up for him.
Resources, nail polish.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. They've got all their salary caps basically tied up. But this team, man, they've got so much superstars. But I agree with Bob. It became quite clear early on that Adam Reynolds, he's their main man for them. So once he got injured, you see the wheels start falling off. So he's the one who plugs everyone in and makes sure they stick to the game plan. And once he was out, you could see guys like Reece Walsh and Ezra Mam trying to lead the team around. But to me, they were way too flashy. So if you look at a top side like, say, Penrith, for instance, when they lost Cleary, they doubled down on the defence. They completed like their sets at a really high rate, and they grinded out wins. So when Nathan comes back, they've got these good habits, and he was able to add that touch of class on the top. So when Reynolds was out, the Broncos, it felt like they tried to finesse their ways to win games and play this sort of high risk, high reward style around Walsh and Mam. And they went for too many big plays and trusted their talent too much. And it felt like it created a lot of bad habits for them. So when Reynolds came back, he wasn't able to sort of undo all
why
those.
are we playing like the Tigers?
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't able to undo all those bad habits. So in hindsight, and I'm saying this in hindsight because of what happened, I thought once when Reynolds went down, I thought the Bronx should have done what the Panthers did. Sort of,
Simplify the
trust
game.
their defence, complete
Well, I
high,
don't even
and
think
build their
he could do
game
that.
around the
Yeah.
go forward of Carrigan and Haas and Jensen. That's a gun middle.
Yeah.
That should have been the focal point of their attack instead of the flash of Walsh. So I thought Kevy, I thought that was poor coaching from him. He's had 4 years at the club. They've missed the playoffs 3 times with a top 8, potentially a top 4 roster. So we've already seen some cautionary tales of what happens with the Eels when they sort of hold on to a coach for half a season too long. The Rabbitohs did the same thing with Demetrio. I'd be sacking him, making a clean cut now. Don't wait till halfway through next year and see if he's all right when he's not.
We're loyal.
We've already seen what happens. Look at the Eels. They held on a little bit too
Went
long
from
for
a
Brad
grand
Arthur.
final
Mid-season sack.
to a
Didn't
wooden
work. Same
spoon
as
in
the
2
Rabbitohs.
years.
With
Exactly.
the Warriors.
Get rid of him. He's the problem. He's the problem.
Merry-go-round.
Yeah.
He's the problem. They've got a good roster, and they shouldn't be languishing where they are. 4 years, 3 years out the top 8. Get rid of them.
Harsh words. Roger, you got anything
Beer's
else
kicking
to
in
kick in the boot as well?
I think
Kick this
everyone's
guy while he's
safe.
down.
The funny thing is, I think everyone's
enough.
covered
You
everything,
want to
and
try and finish the pod without him crying?
all the dramas. I think it was raised as well that there's, whether there was attitude from the players or the bad attitude from players within camp. But next year, as everyone's touched on, Kevin Walters obviously going to be under pressure to get some results to try and get the top 8 or even better. Otherwise, is the support of the old boys going to be enough, or is the board going to swing the axe? So they made a sort of a final charge this year, but they lost 3 out of the last 5 games of the season, and I think that could have made a difference where they would have finished. It could have just had them inside the 8. But a funny stat for them this year was that they couldn't beat anyone in the top 4 from this year's top 4. They had in the highest cup they had this year was the Cowboys. From coming 17 minutes away from a grand final last year to where they are this year is really disappointing in respect to the Broncos fans, and I'm sure that they'll look to rectify that for next year. Someone brought out a stat that they're the most successful team since they've come into the NRL in 1988 with the most championships. They've got the history for it. They've obviously got the roster for it.
That one since 2006, though, so we're getting up to nearly 20 years. We can't keep going back to those old stats.
Hey,
But what have the Warriors got to look back at?
The Blues of the NRL. Come
We're
on,
not
man.
bringing up. I'm not talking the Warriors being a powerhouse. You're the one who's bringing it up from
I'm just
old
saying. I'm
stats
just
from
saying.
nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Based on coming since them coming in 1988, they've got the most championships out of all the NRL teams. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, from
So,
88 till 2006, but since then, they've been languishing.
All right, let's
I
stop
think there
kicking
were
our
too
poor dog
much.
when he's down.
Let's
Too
move
much
along. Let's
Vegas
move
at the
along.
start of the year. Too much. Let's go Vegas. You got a prayer in
Exactly.
Vegas.
the Warriors are going to Vegas next year. They won.
So that was the line from the earlier podcast as well when you guys took out that what was it, preseason challenge. It's like Solid Broncos won. He's like, oh mate, it's just the beginning of the silverware for this year.
Hey, remember that stoush real early in the year between Kerrigan and Reynolds? Like they were
That's right.
filmed fighting. So,
That's nothing,
And
bro.
then they apologised.
they apologized, but cracks were showing even then back in
Even
February
then.
of the year.
Nah,
Like,
exactly.
Of
Every team
course.
does that.